Hello everyone. Today I have a Xilonen adventure deck for you, and with that let's go take a look at the deck. Here we have today's deck. We are using Xilonen, Kachina, Furina. The of course idea being we are going to use Bona and Coquette along with all the other good adventure cards to simply spam Tower of Ipsissimus as fast as possible. That is the main idea. Tower of Ipsissimus as fast as possible. After that, either the Chasm or Tonatium or Genu Whale, whichever the situation calls for. Most of the time Chasm, because we want that extra dice it provides, but the main idea is indeed rushing Tower of Ipsissimus, which is why we have so many adventure cards in the deck. The only one well actually there are a couple cards missing, but the only card you could add is Adventurers Guild, which is probably only good with Tower of Ipsissimus, but with this deck you have enough ways to gain adventure that you don't need it. Apart from that, we are running Aquila, Favonia and Maidens. Why, you might wonder? Well, Maidens is of course good with Furina's Summon when our opponent is a bit more aggressive. Having a way to stay alive longer is very, very good. Aquila, Favonia, because once we have Tower of Ipsissimus completed, we get the Holy Sword. The Holy Sword gives us a lot of extra damage and heals one of our characters to their max HP. I mean, it's plus 12 HP from playing that card, and we have no way of increasing max HP, so it's a guaranteed to max HP if there isn't a ridiculous amount of Wand of Life. But the point is, we are going to have one of our characters in very good shape. But the Holy Blade is a one-time heal. If our opponent is playing very aggressively, simply that it's the same thing like activating Genu Whale once. Yeah, sure, one of your characters is now at max HP, but if the opponent is playing aggressively, that will not stop them. They will just take you down again. Which is why I have Aquila, Favonia and Maidens, because with this combo we get that extra healing from, of course the idea is to play these cards onto Xilonen. Of course Maidens is not necessary, you can most of the time you wanna play Nim Stream on the Xilonen for that extra damage once the adventure is complete, but the idea is to play Aquila, Favonia on the Xilonen so that we have the weapon and the burst to heal her, and she is in fact the main carry of this deck. When we are collecting adventure points, that's when we are using Kachina mostly, but there's nothing stopping you, especially if the opponent is playing a stall deck. Go for Xilonen, go for Xilonen's elemental skill and technique, because with this deck we don't actually have that much draw power. We have a decent amount with Narcissan Cruise, Strategize and Weeping Willow, as well as the Lost Legacies in the Sand. But if you get lucky, if you get unlucky with your starting hand, even if you play the Lost Legacies of Sand, there's still the possibility that you don't get any extra draw power, and in those cases going for Xilonen's technique is the way to go, because that of course lets us draw a lot of cards, and that's how we are going to get all of the adventure stuff. But most of the matches you are going to get some adventure stuff, some draw power in your starting hand, and you usually want to go for Kachina skill and techniques if you have Bona and Coquette. If you don't have Bona and Coquette, you wanna go for Kachina, usually skill with, Fell Dragons, Monocle or Nim Stream, and then go to Furina to summon. Of course, because Furina's passive skill immediately creates the Seeds Sacred and Secular card that allows us to activate Seymour round 1 if we have it. But yeah, the main point is most of the time when you start out, you start with Kachina, start with Furina. If you are against a star deck, you might as well start with Xilonen, it doesn't matter. But because Xilonen is our main late game carry, the idea is to keep her safe. But yeah, other than that, card-wise, we do have one Natlan Resonance, of course, once again for that when it is necessary. It's good to have one copy, and we have Art of Sleepy Meditation to discount the Holy Blade, because that is a 4-cost card, the last benefit you get from Tower of Hypsisms. Anyway, I think that is enough about the deck. Let's get into the games. For the first game, we have an aggressive Alhaitham burn deck. And in this game, if I remember correctly, we are going to see the importance of healing for this deck. Of course, you can see, even though I have quite the perfect setup to start with Kachina, I go for Furina, because I know I need Furina's skill to heal me, because Alhaitham burning can deal a lot of damage.
Nice and spicy.
Unsurprisingly, Seymour once again, because we have the Seed Secure, the Furina card, because we have it. Having the Seymour here is very, very good. And we play the Feldragon's Monocle as well onto Furina. Why? Because this way we can immediately take 2 stacks for Tower of Hypsisms, which creates 1 extra dice. Usually I like to play the 1-cost artifact onto Kachina, because you don't often use her skill more than once per round, unless you are playing a Tonatium deck. And unsurprisingly, I do play Pona and Coquette early, even though I could have, went for Kachina's skill and then play next round when I would actually get full value out of playing her, but it doesn't really matter. I thought the Geo Resonance was more important, as I want to keep my characters alive, because like said, my opponent's deck can deal a lot of damage. Now we go for Kachina's skill. This does have the benefit that now if they don't have a melee talent, which they unfortunately do, they wouldn't have been able to, if they had switched to Alhaitham, which is what I was expecting, I would have just switched to Furina here, but now since they did have Emily's talent, there's no point keeping Kachina alive anymore. I'm gambling on the fact that they don't have gamblers, I mean only 3 cards. Fast action switch to Xiangling, of course they are going for Xiangling Burst, and then probably to Alhaitham. It is a very, very unfortunate looking situation, but luckily my cards are actually pretty good. You can see we are already up to 7 stacks on round 2. This compared to my last Tower of Hypsisms deck, which was more of a chlorine deck. That usually took until round 4 or 5 to actually get Tower of Hypsisms, unless you were really, really lucky. But with this deck, you can see it's very easy to get Tower of Hypsisms consistently on round 3, and with a good starting hand, good cards, you can absolutely proc Tower of Hypsisms with this deck on round 2, even though you usually don't want to do that, because in most cases, if you go for that sort of game plan, your opponent just gets a free pass to do whatever they want.
Brilliant!
I do a skill mostly to store, nothing more special about that, and I come to the conclusion that, like I said, Xilonen is my late game carry. The likelihood that my opponent has gamblers when they only have 2 cards is very, very low, so it's better to just sacrifice Furina now that we don't really need her anymore, having 4 stacks of her summon and the burst on the field. Unsurprisingly, I go for the technique, and I do play the... what sword was that? Wooden toy sword, which you get from 5 stacks of Tower of Hypsisms. Gives us a couple dice and a couple healing. And you can see we are at max HP and only 2 adventure needed, which we can get from the fish card there to activate Tower of Ipsissimus. And of course, my opponent, I can only do one heavy hit. After that, they have run out of Pyronado, and well, there isn't much else in their deck that can do a lot of damage, especially like Emily could do, but they don't have her elemental skill on the field anymore, so it's looking very, very good for me. I actually decided to go for a burst here first. Why? Because I was hoping to get this card right here, and because I did count like the likelihood that they have anything that they can do right here to actually take out Xilonen fully is very unlikely. But there I go with the Holy Blade. Of course, because I can, I might as well play Seymour and activate another adventure, like so. And like I said, we go for the chasm. Why? Because it gives us dice. And the thing about Holy Blade, you only get that extra damage when you do a charged attack. This is why a chasm is a good choice, since it gives us dice, making it easier to do multiple attacks with that Holy Blade per round. After all, like I mentioned earlier, my previous Ipsissimus deck was with Chlorine, and Chlorine, of course, being able to make her normal attacks into 2 cost makes it very easy to activate the Holy Blade, but since we are in this deck using Xilonen as the main carry, having some source of dice is very good. But there you can see Holy Blade activating, and if you didn't know, the Furina buff does increase the Holy Blade's damage. Your weapon doesn't, your whatever things do not, like Furina buff. And I think like, because the Holy Blade does elemental damage of the character's type, in this case Geo damage, Xilonen's damage buff should also increase your Holy Blade damage. And also Shenhe Burst should increase Holy Blade's damage. But weapons do not, and that's part of the reason why we have the Aquila Favonia, because if you do the math with Aquila Favonia, Nim Stream, Furina Burst and Holy Blade altogether, you can do over 12 damage per hit, meaning you can one-shot, in the ideal scenario, any character, or at least most characters. Anyway, let's get into the next game. Now, for the next game we have a discard deck. Now, of course, the scary part here is mostly that potential high damage early game, because, like I said, usually this deck we need to hold out until round 3. After that, we've usually gotten to the point that you can get the Holy Blade, and with the Holy Blade you can fully heal one of your characters. So the fear here, of course, is the fact that they are going to do a lot of damage very early on. Luckily, because this isn't the Flames of War Xinyan spam deck, there isn't that big of a threat to get being, taken out early. They actually want to, get Chaska bullets and whatnot with that sort of deck. You can see here, because I didn't get the ideal cards and I actually want to get the healing from Narcissus and Goo. And I don't want to get rid of Nimstream to the bottom. I don't want to put Nimstream at the bottom of the deck. I actually put Aquila Favonia onto Xilonen here. Kind of hoping they, wouldn't have overloaded there. The plan was to go for Xilonen's skill and technique, but since they did have the dice to overload, I just simply go for Kachina's skill early, so that next round I can play Pona and Coquette, do a technique with Kachina and get 2 stacks of adventure. And now that I have Seymour, I can also easily play the Furina card for some easy adventure gain. I of course know the likelihood that my opponent would actually go for Scorpion Burst, not to mention a burst that would actually have, the Bone Cruncher blocks discarded, is very unlikely. They only have 4 cards, and you can see here they switched to Xinyan, there's nothing to worry about. I of course want them to overload Kachina so that I get a free switch here. which I do get once my opponent does the skill. Because I have nothing equipped on the Kachina, it's completely fine to tank a lot of damage. Once again, Kachina is here to early game give us easy adventure with Bona and Kufit without, you know, threatening or having the need for Xilonen to take damage. That's why we have Kachina here tanking all the damage, like so. That's because this is her purpose in the deck. Of course, every now and again you do end up in a scenario where it's actually better to sacrifice other characters than Kachina, but most of the time Kachina is the one you want to sacrifice for aggressive decks. Now you can see we only have 5 stacks, because this has been a slightly more, how should I put it? I've had to take more care, put more care into, you know, actually keeping my characters alive. I haven't been able to collect that much adventure, but you can see here we are now getting into it. Once again, opponent only having 2 cards, the likelihood of any sort of big burst with a lot of Bone Cruncher blocks is very unlikely. My plan here is very much to tank whatever damage they do. I'm kind of planning to go for Xilonen burst, but if I do get overloaded, I just simply switch to I'll be on Furina and I can with Feldragon's Miracle, I can just do a Furina skill. Now of course I don't have the dice anymore, but that will not stop me, and we are also finally getting some value out of Aquila Favonia. Also part of the reason why I haven't been able to collect adventure so much. But now you can see in this round we easily got the rest of the adventure needed. All we need to do was a couple of skills with Xilonen, 1 technique, and play a couple cards. So even though we only had like 5 adventure at the start of this round, we got the whole other 7 adventure needed, just like that. At least I think we had. At least I think I had 5 adventure rights. Anyway, now that we have the Holy Blade, it's actually time to start pushing back on the opponent. No need to worry about that. Overload damage on the Furina, of course. Furina burst would be nice, but it is not a necessity. Luckily, I made a slight miscalculation there. I actually didn't think I would overdraw, but luckily both woven dice were kept, and the Weeping Willow completely useless at this point of the game. Some overload shenanigans from the opponent, but remember there's nothing to worry about the moment one of my characters the moment Xilonen will be low on HP, we are just going to play the Holy Blade to fully heal her. Emptying the hand a little with playing some cards there. You can see hand was quite full. And indeed I'm not taking, I don't need any rush in playing the Holy Blade. Like, I can just wait until my character has taken a bit of damage before I play it, so I get more value out of the plus 12 healing. Like you can see, my opponent doesn't have any draw power. They are very much relying on the Conductor's top hat to fix their dice, for example. And if they have bad cards, there's nothing my opponent can really do. Or if they have bad cards and bad dice, Yeah, sure, they are kind of guaranteed couple hits per round. But that doesn't really matter.
Time to shine.
I do go for the Furina burst once again. I'm in no rush to play the Holy Blade because I know my opponent, it's very limited the amount of damage they can do at this stage.
Amp it up. I knew you'd miss me.
Simple swap style and mostly tank that damage once again. Now of course I could play Holy Blade also on the Furina, but since Xilonen does have the weapon, it's better to just tank all the damage, because why not? Once again emptying the hand a little. Not really necessary, I could have just, you know, tuned or something earlier in the round, but it doesn't matter either way. I would have played the Geo Resonance either now or later, so it's not a big deal. But I think we are now getting to the point where I actually start fighting back with the Holy Blade. Not to mention I got the Art of Sleepy Meditation, so there's some dice discounts there. Quite the lucky get from Seymour, that is +1 dice for me. Of course, now is finally time to play the Holy Blade, and you can see here the reason why we have cash, and you can see the amount of dice I have keeps increasing. Getting back. But you can see there a nice one shot, since we have all of these buffs here. And we are still at full HP, and there will be another one-hit KO. Of course, if you wanted to make this deck even more, you know, purely for Xilonen survivability, you could just go for the Genuine Whale from the start, but since we have that survivability, since we have the source of all that extra damage, is actually, in my opinion, the best adventure location to go for is Ipsissimus. Yeah, like you could make a version where you just make a stall deck that is just spamming Genuine Whale with this deck, but I think Ipsissimus actually gives you that, you know, chance to fight back, which is much funnier than just using the boring ass Genuine Whale to just keep your characters at max HP. Anyway, let's get into the next game. Now, for the next match, we have Lunar charged with Nuvliet and Furina. Now, since my deck, of course, is a bit more on the stall side, matchups like this can actually be quite difficult, because you can imagine if I get, for example, Aquila Pavonia in my starting hand and don't want to play it round 1, and then my opponent sticks some Inefa talent, and that immediately cost increases the weapon and stuff like that. It can get very bad. So in matches like this, the idea is to keep, of course, our hand as empty as possible.
Installation chamber deployed.
Tower of Ipsissimus does have the whenever you reach an even number of adventure, you do get elemental dice, so we do actually have quite a good way of getting rid of our cards, since we can either tune them whenever we get a random dice from Tower of Ipsissimus, or if the opponent is, you know, using cost increase with Inefa's talent, we have some source of, you know, getting dice ourselves, so we can match that cost increase. Doesn't matter here getting that electric shock, because I ended my round. Well, the electric shock was gained in the end phase, it doesn't affect this round. Yeah. So it doesn't matter, I can play the fish card here later. Now there is the cost increase, there is the Inefa talent, now it's starting to be a bit annoying. Now I have two options, either play those cards or play my Arcane. I decide to go for my Arcane, since that hand wasn't that great, but now I have the Aquila Pavonia problem. I kind of have to play this card, especially now, because I mean, if I tune both of them, then I won't have them, surprise surprise. Once again, Seymour being very good for me with that underwater treasure, but you know, had I would either have to tune both of my weapons there or play one, and I decided it's better to play one weapon for later use, even though like I get no value out of that Aquila Pavonia for this round, probably not for the next round, but maybe round after that I actually start getting value out of it.
Witness my
All of these cards are cheap, and not to mention, like, you know, extra dice. This one gives extra dice. There's no need to completely empty my hand here. Even though, like, this one gets cost increased now because it gives random die when played. It's kind of ±0 sort of scenario. You can see I only have had 5 adventure there at the end of round 2, right? So also cost increase on the Bonan Cookie, very unfortunate. I would have loved to play that, but it's not the end of the world. You can see here, even though it costed 3 dice, it was ±0 because Starter Gypsimus and the card itself gave us back dice. But now my hand isn't the greatest, but luckily I can play, for example, Bonan Cookie here, which I do to give me a bit of adventure here. And then of course I can play the Geo Resonance. And switch characters. Usually, once again, we would like to sacrifice Kachina, but because Kachina is currently our only good way with this, you know, Bonan Cookie and Feldragon's Monocle, it's the best combo I have currently to get adventure. So tanking with Furina is the better option here. Now once again, cards I would very much like to play. It's very unfortunate that one of them will be getting a cost increase, but it is no problem. As you can see, we can just play this at whatever point we feel like.
I knew you'd miss me.
Stalling out a little here, or stalling a little here, but now I'm kind of this was a slight mistake. I kind of forgot that the Nubians burst deals 2 damage to the active character, so I should have actually switched to Xilonen and then to Kachina, but I made a little mistake there, but it's no end of the world. We just go to Xilonen and play the Geo Resonance. Not to mention, because we played the Nim stream on the Xilonen, we should be easily able to get the remaining adventure points needed for the Tower of Ipsissimus to activate. Once again emptying the hand so that there's no fear of any cost increase, electric shock shenanigans. I go for a normal attack simply so that, you know, getting the cards from the technique, even though it would activate Tower of Ipsissimus this way, it's actually better for me to, you know, save Tower of Ipsissimus, most importantly the Holy Blade, from getting into my hand, because now there's no chance of cost increase affecting it. And I can easily just deal 1 skill since I have Moon Stream. I can play that next round to get the last remaining adventure points needed. At this stage I might as well go for an... I actually played that. I misremembered, I thought I could went for a burst there, but I go for a normal attack instead. You can see here we once again pick Chasm, and with enough out of the game there's no longer need to worry about her talent card or untunable affecting my cards, which get electric shock. Now it's a little scary here since, I mean, we already saw Heavy Strike. They could have some other ways of increasing Nubian's damage, but luckily we get to see here the Aquila Favonia equipped earlier, kind of saving us, keeping the HP nice
The tides beckon.
big. And you can see here, without Aquila of Favonia, Xilonen would in fact be dead this round. So there was some value in playing it early and actually, you know, keeping one copy of it instead of tuning them both when I got them early in the match. And of course now, even though I have low HP, it's nothing to worry about, like play that for some extra HP, play a second one from some extra HP like so. Go for an elemental burst for some HP. And look at that, we even got Mystic Soup for some HP. And of course my opponent makes the mistake of switching to Nucleat, which means I'll simply one-shot him here and now. We even have the Cryo Resonance, which allows us to do that without Furina's. Actually, it's not quite the one-shot, but I mean, more than enough that we only need to do one more attack and Nucleat will be out of the game. Of course, we once again want that charged attack, so we play the strategize there. And there goes Nucleat. And of course, Furina alone simply is not enough. I end my round here first, just to make sure there won't be, you know, any... I mean, because I could have, you know, played, but there was the chance that, hold on, they might pull out some, you know, woe and die shenanigans. I wanted to make sure there won't be any unfortunate mishaps. But now I'll simply finish off the game with one charged attack. And with that, let's get into the next game. Now for this match we have of course Siegewin Nuke Burst deck with the new, I don't remember the name, but there was the new weapon that increases a bow, new weapon bow, which increases the elemental burst damage by 2, so my opponent is of course playing that weapon along with Siegewin to deal a lot of damage with just one burst. Of course, it doesn't really matter to me, because I only really need one of my characters to stay alive. And, you know, once my opponent has bursted once, the next burst will take some time. And I'm of course talking about Siegewin's burst, because they are more, if they have, for example, like electro resonance and such, they will probably want to play it with Raiden instead of, you know, saving it for later. They of course recognize my deck is in no way able to take out Raiden early. You can also see this is the sort of basic game plan. Kachina skill, Feldragon Monocle, Furina skill with Feldragon Monocle. If I had Bonan copied, it would have been Kachina skill plus technique, then going to Furina to skill next round or whatnot. If you have Seymour, play Seymour and play Furina's card from the passive skill, you know. Simple stuff like that. This is the basic game plan.
Torn to oblivion!
But there we saw the first electro resonance, and of course, like mentioned, I don't care about the first Siegewin burst. It is the possible second burst that is only scary. They are most likely looking for Siegewin's weapon there. But do not forget, even if my opponent is spending a lot of time on setup, that only gives me more and more time in getting Tower of Ipsissimus. And the moment I have the Holy Blade from Tower of Ipsissimus, that means I can pretty much once again threaten to one-shot Siegewin. That is also the reason why I end my round here on Furina, not only to of course take the do not spread electro, but also so that I can burst Furina next round. After all, with my opponent's setup, they are very likely to actually do some damage the next round. So having Furina Burst to get us that lovely damage stacks will be very good. Playing Art of Sleepy Meditation mostly for Seymour to get some, cards I can use for that to activate it. Since, of course, Feldragon's Monocle only activates from elemental skills, not from burst, so we don't get any adventure from using Furina's burst here. We also get to use these Art of Sleepy Meditation to play the countdown we copied from the opponent for very cheap. And I did make a quick calculation there. Even if they have the weapon, the 13 HP should be just perfect so that Xilonen doesn't one-shot Kachina in one hit, is what I'm saying. You can see here we have just the 3 HP left. Had I not played the Geo-Resonance, Xilonen would have one-shot Kachina and I would have had tanked the second part of Xilone's burst with either Furina or Xilonen. Of course I could have also played Mystic Soup and, hoped for damage reduction or the extra max HP, but I wanted to play it for, I wanted to use Geo-Resonance specifically because that way, if my opponent had, for example, Adeptus Temptation, they would have had to play it for that one-shot kill. Which of course means one less possible Adeptus for later. I want to tank the last part of Xilonen Burst extra damage with Furina, so I use the skill there. Not to mention it once again gives us one adventure stack since we have the Feldragon's Monocle. Simply stalling here at this point since I don't really have good cards to. I was hoping for, of course, for the fish cards here to finish off Tower of Ipsissimus, so I decided to simply, do some setup with Aquila, Favonian Maidens and then just Serenity plus Geo-Resonance to keep my characters healthy. Of course the unfortunate part here is that Weeping Willow will not activate this round since we have more than 2 cards in hand. But there we go, we got the double fish card that will allow me to complete Tower of Ipsissimus adventure, and it will be once again time to fight back. By this point I'm sure you have realized the idea behind this deck. Collect the adventure with Kachina, Furina of course giving you the damage bonus and keeping you alive, and then have Xilonen finish off the game. Since my opponent went for full setup, which is very odd of them at this point of the game. Well, they do have, full energy for Siege Phase, so I kind of understand. But this allows me to freely collect the last needed adventure for the Holy Blade. I also play Meme Stream to maximize my damage for the next round. And now my opponent has all the dice in the world. I mean, 14 is a lot.
Shine down.
Great and skill, completely understandable. Of course, they want to stall the game, and this also, stall until I run out of, dice or whatnot. But then they make the ridiculously big mistake of switching to Siege Win. I mean, you saw the Tower of Ipsissimus, it was on the field for how long? My opponent like this, all they needed to do is switch to Iansan. I cannot one-shot Iansan with just a normal attack. So it would have tanked one whole hit. Then same thing with Raiden. All they needed to do was stall the game by swapping characters, but they go to Siege Win without a fast action, and that means Siege Win gets one shot, like so. And with that, my opponent realizes there's nothing they can do and give up. But I have one last game for today, so let's get into that one. Now for the last game, we have a Kave deck. Now Kave, of course, has been getting a buff after buff in the latest updates, with more and more expensive cards getting added to TCG, and of course the whole Bloom Transfiguration. But this match will actually be quite fun, because usually what you want to do with this deck against Kave, you wanna hope for double maidens, and you wanna get Furina's burst, no, not Furina's burst, Furina's skill on the healing mode as soon as possible. But there happened to be something quite funny there. Seymour copied in the name of the extreme. Now what is the alternative way of dealing with Kave decks? Well, as a matter of fact, the moment they ran out of cards in their deck, Kave's burst scans will no longer deal any extra damage. This is totally, not foreshadowing as to what is to come. Note also, because Seymour copy is the top card of your opponent's deck, my opponent didn't draw any cards, meaning that in their hand there is currently another in the name of the extreme. I'm sure you are starting to guess where this is going to go here very, very soon.
Sight clear.
Why did I wait there? Why did I give them a bloom? Because now the transfiguration is in their hand. Well, not the transfiguration, the blessing is in their hand. So, it is in fact time to empty my hand. Now, unfortunately, I have to use the discount to play the toy sword, so I don't get full value out of that one, but we got to steal the bloom blessing there. And now my opponent only has 16 cards left in their hand. Also, funny enough, we stole my most talent card there. Also, because, of course, I don't have my... I got rid of my arcane card, so stealing my opponent's arcane card is actually quite valuable, since we do have the Favonius sword in the deck, so... Aquila Favonia in the deck. We have Aquila Favonia in the deck, so getting Ancient Courtyard from my opponent is very, very good. I'm kind of hoping for my opponent to draw more cards before I once again play in the name of the extreme. But while I'm doing that, of course, quick note, you saw like my opponent's Kave deck is not optimized for damage. You saw there they discarded food cards with burst scan and whatnot. So, and I mean they have 0 cost cards in their deck. That is not something you want with Kave decks if you wanna go for damage. But
is it time to go?
Against a more normal damage, oriented Kave deck, you wanna go for that double maidens with Furina's skill. That should be able to hold out, since you do have Geo Resonance, you do have the Toy Sword which heals you, you do have Mystic Soup in this deck. You have ways to, tank some damage. And once again, go for the idea that sacrifice Kachina, sacrifice Furina, get the Holy Blade, one-shot Kave. That's basically what you should go for. In a more classic Kave matchup. I would have played in the name of the extreme this round, but since they played 3 cards, they only have 3 in hand, there's still 11 in their deck. It's better to wait a little longer with that one. Not to mention, I can use this time to collect adventure points. And once again, the same thing. No matter how much dice my opponent has, the moment I get rid of their carry in this case Kave, there's nothing they can do. And now it is in fact looking like the perfect time for the name of the extreme. I do still switch characters because I want to get, you know, full value out of that. By the way, once again my opponent making a clear mistake there. They already had a Bloom Gore. They went for another skill there. So they get, you know, Bloom Cores do not stack up.
The flames!
I was kind of, in this scenario, I was counting on the fact that, okay, it will not be a 4-cost card, it will be some 3-cost card and Xilonen will be fine. But in this case, unfortunately, there was a 4-cost card, so Xilonen got taken out. Of course, in this scenario, there's nothing to worry about. You still have Furina, you still have Kachina, just play the Holy Blade on one of them. Ideally, of course, Furina, who has more max HP. I go for the Holy Sword here, and the Chasm once again. Maidens to make sure my characters stay alive, but in this case I actually played the Holy Blade on the Kachina. I actually don't remember why. I probably should have played it on Furina and switched to Kachina, but it's not a big deal as long as we have one character with the Holy Blade, because now we are able to threaten some real damage. And I think it's about finally time we play another in the name of the extreme, since my opponent now has a good amount of hand cards and only 6 cards in the deck. So in fact, that's what I will do here. Like so. And there go the rest of their deck. They have now no way of dealing any extra damage with burst scans. Of course they did play the Bell on the cover, so they have some extra damage from there, but like, that will simply not be enough.
Okay, let's go!
You can by the way see here the burst scans are continuously trying to activate, but there's nothing to do, so there's just that effect again and again. That's quite funny. So yeah, even though like having this sort of double extreme against damage optimized cover deck will be firstly unlikely that you will copy the extreme with your Seymours, but against a more damage oriented deck, you're gonna see here they tried to do something, but like those were all their cards to begin with. I don't need those cards. I need my own cards, which I got here. Well, own and own cards, I think, like this, and this is from them, and these were all from the Chasm, so...
Scanning!
Like, it doesn't matter that they played the extreme, the point is they have no cards in their deck anymore, so... there's nothing they can do. And I finally, of course, start actually dealing some damage here, and my opponent realizes there's nothing they can truly do. But yeah, quite the fun Ipsissimus deck. I'd still say like I personally prefer the chlorine version, but it's a nice change, a nice alternative if you're looking for a deck which uses Tower of Ipsissimus. Anyway, that is all for today. I'll see you all next time.